Today, we are really glad that you have made Journey Weekend, and we're glad that you're here. If you are a guest with us on your way out today, if you'll swing by the kiosk, there's an information kiosk there, and we have a packet there for you, has some information about Journey, a small gift, and we'd love to get to know you. Today is a very unique day in the life of our congregation. We're very excited about this day. A few years ago, I met a young guy, younger than me, so maybe not young to you, but definitely young to me, younger guy. I met him at Cranberry at a men's fraternity thing, and over just a couple weeks, we got to know one another a little bit. We actually started meeting with one another, and so if Trevor's here somewhere, I'm going to ask Trevor to come on, start moving on down. There you go. Perfect. And I met Trevor there, and we started meeting, and I want to just kind of tell you just real quickly, there was this thing that happened right on, and this guy was digging into God's Word in a way that, you know, with my busy schedule, I'm running all over the place, and I'm sitting and I'd meet down with him, and I'm sitting there going, man, this guy has spent a lot of time this last week thinking about God, studying God, building his relationship with God, and it was very encouraging to me. And since that time, Trevor has been stepping more and more back into leadership that he once had as a youth pastor and even a lead pastor in his past. And he's led, I think, 3 small groups for us with Andrew and Trevor been leading some of our small groups. And how many of you, if you've been in one of Trevor's small groups, give me a woohoo. Okay, I thought it was going to be more than that, yeah. I know there's a lot that have been there. I've heard a lot of great things about his leadership in those small groups. People walking back, I've actually heard one of the best things I've ever been in, just really drew me into God's presence. And so we're just recognizing the leadership and the spiritual gifts that Trevor has. Today is going to be the first time he has been able to preach God's Word in a congregational sitting in 10 years. Yeah, exactly. And I can't tell you how excited I am about this day, just to watch a guy step back into what God's called him to do. And I guess the message for me as a lead pastor of Journey, if you've been there and you're thinking, man, what does God want me to do? Today is a great testimony about reclaiming what God wants you to do with your life. And I can't wait to hear what Trevor's going to share with us. Come on, Trevor. Yeah, guys, give him applause. Just make him feel really welcome and comfortable today.
Thank you, friend. Well, thank you, Pastor Dan, and thank you for taking the time over this past couple of years to meet with me and help me in this process. Wow, those lights are just brightening. I can't see anybody, so I guess that's good, kind of. So, actually, I can see a few of you guys out there, and you look like a pretty intelligent group. So I'm going to share with you this article I was reading last week, and it was kind of a weird article. It was about this herd of cows. I guess it's called a herd of cows. Group of cows. Herd, is that right? Herd of cows? Okay, it was about this herd of cows who had somehow reached spiritual enlightenment. But they were dyslexic as well. So the article got weirder as we went in. And all day long, all you could hear them in the fields, they were grazing, and all you can hear was, Om, Om. Okay, I know. It's a little cheesy. But cheesy jokes kind of bring me joy. I don't know about you, but I like a little cheese every now and again. It's good. So today we're going to continue, in case you haven't figured out, our series on joy. Not dyslexic joy or cows joy, but ministry joy. Specifically ministry joy. Now, if you were to ask me a few years ago about this thing called ministry joy, I probably would have told you that was some kind of an oxymoron, that it didn't exist. Today's a different story. However, as Pastor Dan has said, it's been 10 years since I delivered my last sermon. A lot can happen in 10 years. Just think about it. Where were you 10 years ago? Just think if you worked out at the gym and you loved going to the gym, but you just didn't go for 10 years. I don't know. You'd probably be out of shape, I guess. Or if you were a singer, but you hadn't sung for 10 years, you'd probably need to retrain your voice when you started again. Or if you're a golfer and you hadn't swung a club for 10 years, probably be a lot of slicing going on. Not doing something, anything, for 10 years has a big impact on your life. So I'm probably a little rusty here this morning, so if you would bear with me, I've forgotten how to preach, I think. So if I go off course and if I kind of just ignore it for a bit and just pretend there's lights shining back on you like it is on me and you can't see me. So now you may be asking yourself the question of why? Why? I like to ask why all the time. Why has it been 10 years since you preached your last sermon? I know I would be asking that question if I was sitting there and somebody else was standing here. So I will attempt to fill you in a little bit. But 10 years is a lot of territory to cover. So I'll give you the Reader's Digest version. Reader's Digest, anybody even know what that is anymore? I forgot. I was reading this. Reader's Digest. Anyway, I'm going to go back even further than 10 years so you can get a more complete picture. I came to know Christ at an early age, like like 5 or 6 years old, as I grew up in a pastor's home and was always dragged to church, which looking back was a good thing now. But I spent the bulk of my teenage years not following Christ and getting into everything that I shouldn't have been getting into, from drugs and alcohol to the extreme and everything else in between. Thank God He saved me from where I was heading. I was saved or resaved, however you want to terminology you want to use. It was at an old-fashioned camp meeting when I was about 20 years old. At that time, I felt a strong call to go into youth ministry. So I set out on a path to Bible college. While in Bible college, I learned a lot about God, theology, and relationships. And since it was a small college, it also acted as kind of a love connection type of a game show. Or at least that was the appearance. So the norm was to find your spouse and to head into ministry. So I bought in hook, line, and sinker. I ended up getting married while in college and started working in youth ministry. Upon graduation, I was involved in youth ministry for a little while more, but there weren't a lot of options in my denomination for youth pastors, as there were a lot of smaller churches that just couldn't afford them. So I did the next best thing. I went into sales. I was involved in youth ministry for about 5 years as a paid staff, and there was a lot of joy in ministry. There was a lot of joy when I witnessed kids that had been in my youth group and they have grown up and become pastors and other church leaders. That's the type of joy we find from the Apostle Paul. Paul wanted everyone to come to know Christ, and he wanted them involved in helping others come to know Christ through various ministries of their own. Paul, in his letter to the Thessalonians, or the people from Thessalonica who came to know Jesus through his ministry, calls these people his joy. The fact that they are walking in the truth brings joy to Paul. 1 Thessalonians 2:19 says, "For what is our hope, our joy, or the crown in which we will glory in the presence of our Lord Jesus when He comes? Is it not you?" Verse 20 goes on to answer his question with, "Indeed, you are our glory and joy." And that's the goal of every pastor and person in a leadership position in most churches. The leaders love it when they can see people in their congregation growing in their faith and then getting involved in ministries that help other people grow in their faith. Then the joy cycle starts all over again, and joy in ministry is felt at many different levels. John also agrees with this idea, and we see him talking about it in 3 John 1:4. Here John is writing to his friend Gaius and is commending him for his faith. He's really encouraging him by telling him other people have even commented to John about his faith. He says in verse 4 of this letter, "I have no greater joy than to hear that my children are walking in the truth." He's saying there's no greater joy than ministry joy. No greater joy than seeing others walking in the truth, walking in the light, walking in the hope, walking in the joy that is Jesus. That is what the leadership team at Journey wants for all who walk through these doors. Okay, so back to my story. We last left me, I was heading into sales. Or back into sales, because I already did have a background in sales. But this time I went into resort sales. I was involved in sales with a resort company and moved into management, started making some decent money, and I thought, okay, this is not so bad. However, deep down in my soul, I was still wrestling with my ministry call. This time it was to become a senior pastor. Now, not senior as in age, obviously, but the lead pastor. I took all the necessary steps and started the process with ministry boards, district superintendents, and every other board known to man, so it seemed. I was then appointed to my first church, which was supposed to be a 6-month interim, as they were in between pastors. That 6-month appointment turned into 3 years. I learned a lot about ministry in those 3 years, and there were many times of joy. Unfortunately, my approach in those younger days was to kick the doors in for Christ, to storm the hill for Jesus. I was a mover and a shaker, and I was going to make stuff happen in ministry. My approach was, this is what I have planned to do for you, God, in regards to ministry. Would you please bless it? I know. That approach was all backwards. God has to lead the ministry, period. Jesus has to walk before me, beside me, and behind me. It has to be His cause, not a cause that I pick up and ask Him to bless. I get it. Finally. The next church I was asked to go was to attempt to do what was called a turnaround. Now, a turnaround was district superintendent speak for, let's go into this dying church and turn it around. Let's get lots of people involved and create a vibrant church for Christ. Boy, sounds good to me. And it did sound good. Unfortunately, I was involved with a group of people that just didn't have the energy to put into a bunch of new ideas and ministries to reach out to new families and didn't really want to change the way things used to be. I remembered author Leonard Sweet's words when he talked about the 7 last words of a dying church. We've never done it that way before. And unfortunately, it was a futile effort. It lasted for a couple of years. I was then called to this vibrant, happening church. It was going to be awesome and bring much joy. Unfortunately, family stresses and issues made it impossible to have a productive ministry. One thing led to another, and I was forced to leave the ministry sooner rather than later. The joy was all gone. There was no more joy in ministry. In fact, there was no joy for church. I did manage to hang on to my faith, barely. But there was no joy in ministry and hardly any in being a Christian. What now? Well, I had very little choice, so I packed up my family. I had 2 young sons by this time. I was going to say small, but Jordan and Colson, if you know them, they're not small. But I had 2 young sons at that point, and we moved across the country. I went back into the industry I'd known well, and that was the resort industry. I started over once again in sales and started doing well again, at least financially speaking. I woke up one day, though. I was divorced, broken, and back into some old habits. I guess old habits really do die hard and have a tendency to resurface during our weakest moments. I remember thinking to myself, how did I let this happen? I was going day to day, just numbing my pain with things of the world, namely drugs and alcohol again. How did I get to this point? This was about a 7-year period that I'm not at all proud of, but felt justified as I was going through it. We have a way to justify stuff in our life. There definitely was no joy, though, for much of anything. The church didn't offer any help whatsoever, so I turned my back on the church for a couple of years. I needed something to happen to shake me out of all this. That something came in 2011, late in the year. I was managing a team of salespeople in a pretty high-end resort, and at the end of one workday, the president came into my office and sat down. He then proceeded to tell me that the company was in trouble and they were shutting down sales that day. It was at the end of the day, so we were just finishing up with our last clients. He then wanted me to call a meeting where we proceeded to tell all the staff the news. Needless to say, I was shocked. and so was my team. We had families to support. What would we do? Apparently the ownership was broke and couldn't pay us any severance or any kind of money whatsoever. As it turns out, there was a lot more involved with pending court dates and stuff like that, and we ended up getting no money. But that was the eye-opener that I needed. This was the event that started my journey back to God. I still had a deep down faith through all this, but I certainly wasn't acting like a disciple of Christ. The journey back took about a year of pain, and more pain, as I had 2 boys to support. After much deliberation and prayer, it's interesting how crisis situations leads us to pray, I decided to take a job at a resort that was once again all the way across the country, in Collingwood. I decided this was going to be a fresh start. I continued praying and seeking God and seeking God and seeking God some more. This was also about the time I started attending Journey and started meeting with Pastor Dan. And God continued the restoration process in me over the next couple of years, where He not only restored my faith, but He restored the faith of my boys, and He arranged the perfect partner for me, Trilby. And now we are married. 2 things I swore I would never ever do again: get married and go back into ministry. Never say never. God did a lot of work in my heart. And now I can say I do things God's way. There are no decisions I make now that doesn't include a consultation with God. Things are no longer done my way, they're done God's way. And if I'm not sure about something, I wait on God and He guides me. I was learning so many things about God and His grace that I couldn't keep up with all the new thoughts that God was giving me, so I started to keep a journal. I decided to take 1 year to really get to know God better. I remember looking back and saying a year goes by really quickly. So why don't I take a year to focus completely on God, all my energies? My thinking was a year is a short period of time, and I wanted to spend as much time as I could in God's presence. If God was showing me new things, I would write them down. I made sure I wrote something every day. Some days I wrote really deep stuff. And other days it was like, today I feel no inspiration from God, and blah, 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 blah. The important thing I had to learn was the discipline of journaling, the discipline of being in God's presence. This journaling process has now become the basis of a book that I'm writing called Deep Spiritual Thoughts. This book is all about the thoughts that God gave me throughout that year of totally seeking Him and focusing on Him and concentrating all my efforts on James 4, verse 8. That verse was the foundation. It talks about drawing near to God so that He could draw near to you. No, I think it's coming up there on the New International Version. So when it comes up, I also looked up the New Living Translation. It says it this way. It says, "Come close to God, and God will come close to you. Wash your hands, you sinners. Purify your hearts, for your loyalty is divided between God and the world." This was speaking directly to me. My loyalty was definitely divided between God and the world. And unfortunately, the bigger part was leaning towards the world. That had to change. And that would change. My role was to draw nearer to God, and the promise is that He would draw nearer to me. Just think about that for a second. The Word is telling us that the great God of heaven and earth will draw near to us if we simply will draw near to Him. Now, I was a little rusty in that department, so I had to think of ways that I could draw near to God or spend time in His presence. I needed to learn the how. How do I spend the necessary time with God in such a busy world? For me, it started with committing time to spend in His presence. It really does start with making appointments with Jesus. It's that simple. If you knew Jesus was going to be attending a specific function, maybe a red letter book signing perhaps, wouldn't you rearrange your schedule to make sure you were there? What if He asked you just to go meet for coffee? Could you find the time? I'm guessing yes. And that's what He wants. He wants to make an appointment with you every day, a standing appointment. We just need to set aside the time. We need to be intentional on drawing near to God. Another area I needed to strengthen was my Bible reading. I hadn't picked up a Bible for years. Again, something that I'm not at all proud of. So I spent a lot of time reading the Bible. This time I was reading it as if it actually applied to me. As if it was written for me. As if the promises in the Bible were promises to me. As if what Jesus said was true. I was setting aside time to spend with God. I was drawing near to God. I was intently focused in His Word. I was once again finding joy. Not necessarily joy for ministry yet, but joy in Jesus. However, as a result of all this intentional drawing near to God, He's done amazing work of restoration in my life. And I want to make sure that He gets the full credit. I would like people to focus on the amazing works of God rather than how far I was from God. I want to make sure that He gets all the glory, that He gets all the praise, that He gets all the honor, because He is a God of restoration. He is a healing God. He is a God that can take all the crap in your life and make some good stuff come from it. He is a miracle-working God, and He's still pulling off miracles today. The fact that I'm standing up here today in front of you, that's a miracle. I look at it this way. I was a masterpiece created by the paintbrush of God. Some bad stuff happened in my life, and I drifted away from God's presence. James 4:8 told me to draw near to God, and the promise was that He would draw near to me. But guess what? The opposite is also true. Draw away from God, and He feels like He's a million miles away. So here I am, God's masterpiece, drifting away from God. Every time I make a bad decision, I get a little sin dirt over me. I then follow that up with an action that isn't pleasing to God, and bam, more dirt on me. I then start to make a pattern of making decisions outside of God's plan for me, and nothing but dirt. Soon I didn't even recognize the masterpiece I once was. This happened subtly, over time, with one bad decision after another. One day I woke up, covered in dirt, and I thought to myself, am I caught in some kind of a bad dream? What happened to me? And then I turned ever so slightly back to God and realized that He is reaching out to me. And I then started my long journey back. You see, God is a master restorer. He deals in fine art all the time. And He lets me know He can restore this masterpiece. In fact, He can make it even better than before. Well, that sounds like a pretty good story so far. But there's a plot twist coming up, so just hang on. Things were finally going well. God was performing an amazing restoration. My spiritual health was now in check. God brought me the perfect match, and I was now married. The kids were doing well. I had an ever-deepening relationship with Christ, and work was going well. Joy, 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 joy. In fact, at this point, I remember singing the old hymn, "It is joy unspeakable and full of glory, and the half has never yet been told." That is how I was feeling. In fact, things were going so well, I even took a holiday. After we got married, we left for an East Coast excursion for a month. We were driving down, and our first stop was Summerside, PEI. Beautiful Summerside, PEI. What more could a guy ask for? We were going to Newfoundland, but what more at this point, what more could a guy ask for? This is great. Life is awesome. There's the joy again. Day 2 in Summerside. Ring, ring. I know phones don't say ring anymore, but you get the point. It was my doctor with the latest results of my blood work. He told me I had some form of lymphoma cancer. Great, the big C. He also said it was over his head, and when I got back, I was to see a hematologist who could better diagnose me. For a month on my holidays, I thought I had cancer, and that was pretty scary. When I got back, I saw a specialist, and he informed me it wasn't lymphoma, but it was early chronic lymphocytic leukemia, which are close in nature. My first thought was, I guess that's it. I guess it's all over. My second thought was much better, and I remember thinking, well, at least it was early. I now faced yet another challenge, and that was, how do I get healthy again physically? I learned lots and lots about diets and changed all my eating habits. That I could change. I did have control over that. And slowly but surely, I am changing that with God's help and Trilby's. In all these struggles this time, I knew that God had it. I felt peace that everything was going to be all right. This was after my intense year in God's presence. I now really know that nothing is impossible for God and that He is at work in my life, causing great things to happen. I am seeing Scripture come alive in front of me and the greatness of God in every corner. I'm now starting to discover a new kind of joy. As I'm getting involved in different ministries, I'm finding that joy for ministry again. So fast forward 3 months after being on this strict regimen of diet and exercise and lots of prayer. I got my blood work checked, and I had shown great improvements just after 3 months. My numbers had all come down where they were supposed to and went up where they were supposed to. It was amazing to see how God was at work. There's still a lot of work left to do, and it'll still take a lot of discipline and hard work, but I know now for sure that God's got this. I do my part, which is the diet and exercise, along with prayer, and He will do His part. The unforeseen part of this process was all the prayers for healing that have been prayed. Prayer is the unsung hero in this scenario, and in every scenario. When I shared my health concerns on one of my posts, I had over 1,100 people see the post. And I knew many of those people would be praying along with many others. God really does hear prayer, and prayer really is the unsung hero. We still have to do our part, because God won't do what we can do, but He will do what we cannot do. The results of the hard work with diet and exercise and prayer are incredible. Now, you won't always get the answers you want with prayer, but you got to know God is always going to be with you. So let's get back to the masterpiece analogy. So here I am, I've got all kinds of dirt over me. I got that idea from the book Mud and the Masterpiece. In his book, John Burke talks about us as God's masterpiece. So let's imagine for a minute if you were walking down the road, just on a little walk. You notice something off in the distance. Something on the side of the road. Now, it's in front of someone's house, and it's in their garbage. So you walk close to it, and you see something sticking out of the top of the pile. You notice it's kind of in the shape of a painting. But it's all full of dirt and grime and mud, and it looks like a real mess. But just as you are turning away to keep on your walk, you notice something at the bottom of the corner. You see a signature. So you move closer. And it kind of looks like the word Pembernt. So you think to yourself, Pembernt? Pembernt, where have I heard that before? Pembernt. You then get an idea. Could it be a Rembrandt? But the dirt is covering it? So you then carefully remove some of the dirt, and you see the full signature. Yes, it's a Rembrandt. You then knock on the owner's door, and you tell him what you discovered. But he says, even if that's true, it's ruined due to all the dirt and the grime all over it, so you can have it. So what do you suppose is the first thing you will do? Well, the first thing obviously is to look on Google, so where you can find someone who restores masterpieces. And you find a master restorer. He comes over to take a look and gets out all his brushes and his restoration tools, and he goes to work. That is exactly what happened to me. I was that painting. God was the master restorer. He took all the pain and struggles and all the issues that I had in my life, and He went to work restoring me. He took away all the dirt and the grime and the grease and the slime, and He said, even though I drifted away, I'm welcome back into His presence. And guess what? Here's the really, really, really good news. God is still in the restoration business. He can take all your dirt and all your grime, all the things that you are ashamed of, and He can restore you back to spiritual health. He can give you back the joy you once had. He's never surprised by anything you may confess. He's never shocked by anything you may have done. He welcomes you with open arms and begins the work of restoration. If you are here this morning and you need some restoration work, just ask God to start the process in you. As we take some time this morning to pray, tell God what areas of your life you want restored, and He will start the work. Draw near to God this morning, and He will draw near to you. Perhaps you're here this morning and there isn't anything major going on in your life. You aren't in need of any restoration, but you feel yourself drifting away a little. You may be bored. You may not be as passionate for ministry or even for Christ as you once were. You have lost your ministry joy. You're feeling burnt out because you're serving as a result of duty rather than the fact that you get to do something eternal. You get to be a partner with God. Every ministry has eternal outcomes. We influence eternity by serving. Even what we may consider the tiniest of ministries has an eternal impact. We must remember that God started the drawing near when He sent His Son as a baby so we could be drawn near to Him. This is the perfect time of the year to start a journey back to the manger and back to Jesus. It's a perfect time of the year to make a new commitment to Jesus, to say, Jesus, I have drifted, and I am drifting from your presence. Forgive me. I commit to draw near to you so that you will draw near to me. If you're here this morning and you don't need to go through a major restoration and you aren't drifting away from God's presence because you've never said yes to Jesus. Maybe you're still trying to figure out what this whole Jesus business is all about. This morning you can start a new relationship with Jesus. You can simply say yes to Jesus. Jesus is reaching out to you this morning. All you have to do is say yes. Yes, I accept you. It's that simple. I want to start my journey of drawing near to you. And yes, I accept your promise that you will draw near to me. Wherever you find yourself fitting this morning, there's one thing I know. Jesus is here, and He will meet you exactly where you are. He wants to give you a new spark, a fresh hope, some restoration, or to help you get back some joy or receive joy for the first time. Whatever you need this morning, as the worship team comes to lead this last song, just take some time to think this through. Reflect on the words of the song. Open your heart to God. Say yes to Him this morning, and get ready for some of that joy.
that this morning. Thanks, Trevor, for your message. I think we all have seasons where we're discouraged and wonder what value we can be to God. And I just hope that you will pray this song with us as we're singing it. And I believe God has great things in store for our community, and we have the privilege of being a part of that. Draw near to me, for I have drawn near to you. Pull on the strings of my heart, for I long to respond to you. All my love is for you, and all my love is yours. All my love is for you, and all my love is yours. Draw near to me, for I have drawn near to you. Pull on the strings of my heart, for I long to respond to you. All my love is for you, and all my love is yours. All my love is for you, and all my love is yours. I've made a place for you here, so come on, come on. All things are possible here, so come on, come on. I've made a place for you here, so come on, come on. All things are possible here, so come on, come on, come on. Draw near to me, for I have drawn near to you. Pull on the string.